U.S. to deploy offensive Tomahawk missiles against China in the Philippines during a war for Taiwan. While everyone is distracted with the ongoing political drama between the Dutertes and the Marcoses here in the Philippines, information was leaked to the Japanese press recently that said that the United States or U.S. will be deploying their multi-domain task force or MDTF in the Philippines in case a war over Taiwan erupts. Among the weapons the MDTF is equipped with is the Typhon mid-range capability or MRC system which, as I had discussed already in 2 videos before, is capable of firing 2 types of missiles, the Standard Missile, 6 or SM-6 and the BGM-109 Tomahawk missile. The SM-6 is used mainly as a defensive weapon, as an anti-air weapon against targets such as ballistic and cruise missiles, and enemy aircraft. It has a secondary offensive capability against ships and against land targets, but with a relatively limited range of only 240 to 460 kilometers, it is incapable of reaching the Chinese mainland when fired from the island of Luzon in the Philippines. The Tomahawk though is a different thing altogether. It is used mainly as an offensive weapon. Its primary role is to attack land targets at long range, although now it has been given a secondary ability to attack ships also. With a range of 1,600 to 2,500 kilometers, it is very capable of hitting targets within the Chinese mainland when launched from Luzon, easily reaching all of China's southern coastal cities and hitting targets as far as Shanghai, which is the financial capital city of China. The deployment of troops and weapons like these is the main reason why the U.S. is constantly waging a never-ending propaganda campaign in the Philippines. They need the Philippines to hate China so it will easily accept the deployment of the U.S. military in its soil, and even help in the fight against China. No other country except China is as close to Taiwan as the Philippines. Batanes itself is much closer to Taiwan than even Okinawa in Japan, and this is why the U.S. secretly sees the Philippines as being critical for the defense of Taiwan. As for the Filipino dogs of the U.S. who will insist that the Philippines will be drawn into a war in Taiwan anyway, well, all I can say is that there are different levels of involvement. One could argue that without the U.S., the war could be contained in certain areas only like Batanes. For example, if China does invade it, which I don't think they will, but I will save that argument for a separate video later. With the U.S. military in the Philippines, the war will spread in a lot more areas, causing more damage and resulting in the loss of more lives. Worse is the fact that, in the back of China's mind, they are most worried with the Typhon MRC being equipped with nuclear missiles. The U.S. has already stopped the production of the nuclear-armed version of the Tomahawk and decommissioned its stockpile of such missiles, but it is also very possible that the U.S. could secretly resume its production and/or recommission their retired stockpiles and put them on the Typhons. When that happens, then there is almost no way for the Philippines to know if those are being brought into the country, because for one, the Philippines is not allowed to inspect the weapons that the U.S. is bringing in. They just rely on the goodwill of the U.S. that they are providing the correct information for those. And the missiles on the Typhons themselves are in sealed containers, so it will not be easy to determine if the Tomahawks there have conventional warheads, or are nuclear-armed. The use of Geiger counters might help detect nuclear radiation, but the missiles and containers themselves could be shielded in such a way that it will be difficult to detect even with such equipment. So, as I said before, once the Typhons owned by the U.S. military are indeed deployed in the Philippines, then China is likely just going to assume the worst case, that it is that they are secretly armed with nuclear missiles and therefore will target the Philippines with their own nuclear missiles as well. And to think that the Philippines really have no interests whatsoever in protecting Taiwan, we even have territorial disputes with them, but the U.S. wants us to just ignore those. Taiwan, for example, is currently occupying the island of ituaba, which we are also claiming. We even have a name for it. We call it Ligaoisland. Taiwan is also claiming the Batanes Islands as part of their own. And lastly, Taiwan also has the same ninedashline claim in the South China Sea or SCS that China has, which U.S. propaganda demonizes and attributes only to China, and is trying to hide the fact that Taiwan uses the same claim. Because of this deployment of offensive missiles against China in the Philippines, renowned author and lawyer Rigobertotiglao says that China may reclaim land and establish military bases in Scarboroughshoal, otherwise known as Panatagshoal or Bajodemasinloc, by the Philippines, as a response. This is currently ongoing. I will likely write more about this later, as things develop. And by the way, most of the pictures you saw on this video are US troops already orienting Filipino troops on the operation of the Typhon Marcy system in Laoag, Ilocosnorte last June of this year of 2024.